And talking about music, because I've been trying to listen to. When I say trying, I listen to your band, Periphery, or I don't know if that's your band per se, but you work with them, and bands like Meshuggah and bands in your style, if I can say so. And for some reason, I always struggle listening to that sort of metal. It always makes me freak out. It makes me
Really?
really anxious, and I have friends and they love that sort of metal, but for me, it's always been too scary. Like as far as I can go, it's like Mastodon. That's like okay, I can listen to that without being anxious. But when it
Wow.
comes to Meshuggah, you guys, Periphery, other bands like that, it always like I don't know. It's always make me scared.
Yeah. I guess there is probably quite on purpose a very kind of anxious vibe, especially with Meshuggah. It's very dark and bleak, isn't it?
Mm.
And there's certainly some aspects of Periphery's music, and it's certainly not my band. I was a member of it for 6 years and continue to be really good friends with all of the guys in there. But Misha Mansour is the founding member
Yeah,
and
yeah.
principal songwriter still. Just an incredible talent. And, one of the things that I think he brings to, or brought to Periphery in the beginning and everyone else carried on with and perhaps developed to is there's a lot more melodicism than perhaps some of the things which influenced Periphery from the metal world. So in Meshuggah, it's quite rare to find stuff that sticks to conventional melody. It tends to be very chromatic and atonal by
Mm-hmm.
design, whereas Misha specifically has this incredible ear for harmony and melody, and he's just so good at it. He's so influenced by soundtracks, like video game soundtracks, and if you ever see an interview with him, you'll probably and he's talking about writing, you'll probably see him referencing the Final Fantasy soundtrack and stuff like that, which is all just so brilliantly composed and arranged and features some really cool modal chord progressions and use of melodic minor and all
Mm.
sorts of kind of cool textures that you don't necessarily find.
Mm.
So for me as a listener to Periphery before I joined and now since leaving, I think that's one thing that I really enjoy. But it's interesting because for me, Mastodon perhaps is a little bit more metal. Like it's a
Oh
bit
yeah.
more like for me it's like beard music. Like it's like dudes
Yeah.
that smell and are sweaty with beards, like really kind of lumberjacky in a really satisfying way. But for me, it's a bit not in a negative way at all. But like for me, Periphery is like quite clean actually,
Mm.
barring certain moments. It's quite clean and like precisely executed. And for me, perhaps there's something a bit more scary about bands like Mastodon or
Oh yeah.
going further in that direction where it feels less controlled and more wild. I guess that's a word
Right.
to describe it. But
That's interesting. I mean, when I refer to Mastodon, I don't like. I know some hardcore Mastodon fans. I don't fall into that group because I don't really like those early records where maybe it is more wild, not
yeah,
wild. I don't know, harder. I guess more, you know, growling, whatever it's called.
yeah,
I think that's always what unsettles me is the vocal. I know Periphery. You don't. It's not always growling and stuff like that. There's melodic vocal lines too, but I think that's what puts me off sometimes. That's what makes me anxious.
yeah. I can understand that. And I think that is the most common thing for people hearing metal. And I think it is the thing that's the hardest barrier to entry because if you get rid of the vocals, there's probably quite a lot of musicianship to admire and ear candy in
Yeah, yeah.
there.